In Parshas Nitzavim, the Torah tells us, Pasuk says, La'ahava es Hashem Elokecha, lishmoa v'kolo u'ledovka bo. The Torah instructs us to cleave to God, ledovka bo, to attach to God. And the Talmud says, Maseches Ksuvos, the Gemara says, V'chi efshar lidabek b'shchina. Is it possible to cleave to God's divine presence? HaKadosh Baruch Hu is described, God is described as an eish ochla, a consuming fire, which is itself an interesting metaphor that we have to understand. And the Gemara then says, no, you can't cleave directly to God. But when one marries one's daughter off to a Torah scholar and does business on behalf of a Torah scholar and gives benefit to a Torah scholar in some sort of material way from his possessions, so that person is considered as though he's attaching to God. And it's a very perplexing thing. Why would doing business and marrying into the family and other such behaviors attach one to God? They would seem to attach one to a Torah scholar, and then that person could then later teach you how to attach to God. And secondly, what is this business about God being a consuming fire? What's the idea? I think that the key to this is found in a Gemara in Sanhedrin Samach Daled, page 64 in Sanhedrin. It describes the attachment that the Jewish people had to Baal Peor. Baal Peor was a worship that existed at the times of the Torah that was very convincing and compelling to the Jewish people. It really had a hold over them, and it would pull them in. And the Torah had very different ideas. Baal was antithetical to the Torah, but somehow it spoke very much to the Jewish people. And it describes some of the Jewish people as Nitzavim to Baal Peor. They were attaching, cleaving to Baal Peor. And the Gemara notices that the word for attaching to God is atem hadvekim b'Hashem Elokechem. The word we used before for cleaving is ledovka, or hadvekim, devek, is a different word than nitzmadim, which is how they were attached to Baal Peor. And so the Gemara says the following. It says, Rabbi Huda said in the name of Rav, the nitzmadim to Baal Peor were like a tzamid pasil. The word nitzmadim is like tzamid pasil, which means an airtight lid. As opposed to the Jewish people that were attached to God were like two dates that were, attached together in a cluster. They're sort of glued together. But then b'masnisotana, but we're taught in a brisa, another teaching says that nitzmadim to Baal Peor was, the word for a bracelet is a tzamid. So it's like bracelets on the hands of a woman. Women wear loose bracelets and they move around, as opposed to those who were attached to God, hadvekim, which were completely attached and very tight. And so the simple interpretation would read that the first opinion presented in the Gemara is that the Jews were more attached to Baal Peor than they ever were to Judaism and God. And that the second interpretation takes the opposite perspective and says, no, they were more attached to God than they ever were to Baal Peor. To Baal Peor, they were only loosely connected, like a bracelet is to a woman's arm. And to God, they were deeply connected in a more meaningful way. But the first opinion seemed to say that the Jewish people were attached to Baal Peor like a lid is attached to a bottle. And it was only like two dates in a cluster that they were attached to God. So the Maharal explains the following idea. And I want to sort of explain it in a broader way that will explain our first question, based on how the Maharal explains this Gemara. Attaching to God, when a person cleaves to religion and ideas that are bigger than themselves, they can often entirely surrender their identity, personality, and personal sense of self to that larger cult, religion, ideology. They're willing to give their lives, they're willing to give their personality, they give their feelings. And that's very frightening. I mean, if God is a consuming fire, how can you attach to it? You will just be consumed by it. That's Gemara's question. Well, when the Jewish people were attached to Baal Peor, as tight as they were like the lid on a bottle. You see, if I say, would you pass me that bottle? You pass it with the lid. The lid, when connected to the bottle, loses its identity to the bottle. And now it's just a bottle. The lid is a piece of the bottle. But two dates in a cluster, despite being part of one cluster, maintain their identity as dates. The Jewish people may have appeared more connected to the idol worship, But that's not really what it was. That's not true connection. True connection is not where one loses one's identity to a larger group or ideology or movement. It's where one actually matters. It's interesting to notice how in history, very, very often, movements that are there to help the people don't value people. They will sacrifice individuals, no interest in the life of an individual, for the community, for the collective, for communism. And you wonder, what's the value of communism? Well, it's for the people. But we don't value individual people. We only value the concept of people. In a similar way, we cannot lose ourselves for the group. We have to maintain the importance of the group as many individuals. Similarly with God, we have such a dynamic. Our attachment to God must be one where we maintain our identity. He created us. He wants us to exist for a purpose. How does one have that religious experience? Says the Talmud, the way to attach to God properly is to learn how to live the life of a Torah scholar. Engage with him in business, eat meals with him, make marriages with his children. When you get to know how they're living their lives, they will show you that the way the Torah works is it allows a person to have a fiercely independent and deep sense of self while at the same time cleaving and connecting to God. These do not contradict one another. True Torah observance does not cause a person to stop having opinions and stop having ability to connect, but it allows them to use and harness those abilities to connect to Hashem and connect to God. A very important part of our religious experience is the personal experience. It's the idea that God created you for a unique purpose, to have a relationship with Him, that no one has ever existed that will fulfill the role that you fulfill. And to understand that despite the fact that God is infinite and greater than we can possibly imagine, He's interacting with you like two dates in one cluster. They become one because they're part of one cluster. And yet always each one maintains its own identity and its own sense of self. And ultimately the deepest connection that any two people can have is not when they give themselves up to the other person or the community or to God, but rather when they maintain their identity and give that strong identity to the larger purpose and the larger goal. That is what it means to attempt to cleave to Hashem, and it's a magnificent idea.